Welcome to You Rise Me Up, a podcast about Asian Europeans from all walks of life. Today with me, my friend Wonseok Choi, a Dutch-Korean commercial film director. Wonseok and I met in a clubhouse room for Asians in Europe that I hosted with some friends during the pandemic. It is also where the Asian American I mentioned in my trailer pointed out that he didn't even know there were that many Asians in Europe. Wonseok has worked in film for almost a decade, creating commercials for all kinds of brands, and is the only Asian European film director I know. He is also a Korean adoptee living in the Netherlands. This episode is all about his story and perspectives, from his move into film, views on Asian representation in film, to his background as a Korean adoptee, and the lessons he learned along the way. It is a pleasure for me to welcome him as my first guest on the show. Wonseok, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Wonseok. I'm a Korean adoptee living in the Netherlands and very honored to be the first guest of your podcast.
Thank you, Wonseok. So you mentioned to me before that you used to work in banking and now you're a commercial film director. What did you actually do before and how and why did you move into film?
So I studied sociology, and after my study, I ended up on the headquarters of a big Dutch bank, which was absolutely horrible because I'm like the opposite of a finance boy. I have nothing remotely interest in finance or banking or whatsoever. And after I think I like 1.5 year, I decided to pull the plug, and I always had an interesting in photography and film. So I quit my job, and then I first actually got into photography, fashion photography, and then I made the move to film.
So you quit your job at the bank and then moved into photography first, but how did you actually get your first job in film?
Ooh, that was a long road. So I quit my job at the bank. Then I randomly ended up on a photo set because one of my college friends, she was marketing manager at a fashion brand, and she asked me if she could borrow some of my bikes. So I went and brought them over, and I was really interested what was happening and the dynamics on set. So I started to talk to the man who was the agent of the photographer. Like, how does one become a photographer? What's the approach? And then I called him every Friday around 2 for I think like 2 months. And I think after 2 months he was sick and tired of my phone calls. So he said, "Well, actually, I have an opening for you as like the second or third assistant of a fashion photographer. If you can make it tomorrow, then you're welcome on set." And then actually the first year or half year, I was only like moving around big light stands and doing cables, and I was really considering my life choices. I was like, "Ah, shit, did I leave a comfortable job for this?" But I powered through, and that was I think now 8-9 years ago. And then 8-9 years ago, the budgets for film in fashion weren't that high, so they did ask me, "Oh, can you film like a behind the scene or whatnot?" And so I kind of grew with the budgets into film.
You mentioned that you were considering your life choices. What kept you going, and how did your parents react when you told them that you quit your job in banking and are now doing film?
What kept me going is that I'm very stubborn. So when I make a decision, I feel like I have to own up to that decision, regardless if it was the good one at the time or not. But my parents are like, so my parents are quite different in that perspective. I think my mom always supported my choice, and she was very happy for me. My mom is a bit more creative than my dad. I think in the beginning, my dad definitely did not support that choice. Also, because he doesn't really understand what I'm doing or how one can make money out of such a profession. So that was a struggle, definitely. But now, 8 years later, when I show him my work, he's definitely proud, and he's like he likes it. And I think in hindsight, they're both totally fine with it.
Since your parents are Dutch, did you ever feel the need to adhere to Asian stereotypes in your career choice, or was it like the more general pressure of having a stable job?
I think it's both. Yeah, I mean, it's funny because my dad is Dutch, but in this way, he could definitely be an Asian dad, as in stick to the things you're not like. He used to work in a hospital, so it's more like, yeah, all these new modern jobs for him are definitely not a good life choice. So I definitely felt the pressure from that. But my mom is the opposite. So my mom is quite creative. My mom is very much, you have to do what makes you happy. which is, I guess, not a very Asian mother parenting style. But no, I definitely felt pressure from home as well. But yeah, like I said, I'm quite stubborn, and when I make a choice, then I'll tend to stick with it.
What is it that you actually do on a day-to-day basis now? And what have you learned about film after years of working in the industry?
My day-to-day base. Well, the thing is that everyone who knows me thinks that I'm always like on set and working and whatnot, but like the set life is usually maybe a 20% of the whole job. So yeah, you're still in a lot of meetings, you're still in a lot of preparation, pre-production, and then set, and then post-production, and also a lot of meetings. What have I learned? Well, I mean, I think I learned a lot, but also over the span of 9 years, like technology has been moving so fast. If you also see in the quality of the cameras and like everything you can make, the software and whatnot. So like it's hard to keep up, and I actually don't always keep up with that, because I think in essence, I think it's more important in terms of how you tell a story and why you tell a story than the technical aspect. Like the technical aspect of filmmaking has never really interested me.
That makes sense. Yeah, it's definitely a lot to keep up with. And yeah, whenever I imagine a film director, I also always just think about the set life. But since you make films for a living now, has your view on films changed? Like the way you watch movies or commercials, for example? Or is it still the same?
No, definitely changed. Yeah, I mean, I've always watched a lot of movies. I did that before as well. I really like watching a movie, and like I mentioned before, the technical aspects don't really interest me. But if I watch a movie, I definitely do look at lightings and camera settings and whatnot. Like, so that is definitely true. But yeah, to be honest, I also do watch a lot of commercials. I just want to see what's out there. Just want to see what's on point now, etc. Yeah, definitely.
What's your favorite commercial? Do you have one?
Ooh, I think to pinpoint it down to a commercial, I don't really know. But if we take it a little bit broader, I do like the stuff Nike makes, like the approach Nike does, like the story they tell, because they are always trying to tell a story. And I think it's for me interesting to see in a commercial, are you telling a story and what's the story you're telling? Of course, it's all about selling stuff, but it becomes a bit more interesting when brands actually trying to tell a story.
That actually made me realize I don't think I've ever watched any of Nike's commercials, or at least there's none that pops into my head. But, anyways, since this podcast is about Asian Europeans, I was also wondering what your thoughts are on Asian representation in film. Do you have a favorite Asian movie or a favorite movie with a prominent Asian cast?
Asian representation. I feel like that has boomed over the last maybe year. It's like super brief, right? Like when was Parasite? Was it 2 years ago or 3 years?
I think Parasite is from 2019.
Oh, 2019 already.
Yeah, time flies.
Yeah, but it's also the COVID years. It seems like they're like 2 years missing in the whole in the history of mankind. But yeah, I feel like Asian representation has boomed over the past 4 years. Like before, it was always very stereotypical. Whenever there was an Asian person on the big screen, they were either doing martial arts or they had like a side role as a doctor. They were all doctors for some reason. And I think, I don't know if it was Parasite, but maybe that was the big breakthrough for all Asian cast cinema. I think it was Parasite, right?
I think Crazy Rich Asians came before, but what were your thoughts on Crazy Rich Asians and Parasite?
Oh, those are completely two different movies for me. Because I do remember all my Asian friends were like, "Oh my God, there's this movie coming up, Crazy Rich Asians, and like we have to see it." And going to the cinema, there were like definitely a lot of Asians watching the movie. As a movie, I thought it was not that interesting. It was entertaining to watch, but I wouldn't see it as a great movie. But in terms of what it did for Asian representation, I think it's good, although I also think it's a story about such a small part of the Asian, well, it's not really a community, but like it's not really representing Asians in a general, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, definitely. I do think that it still plays on the stereotype of Asians being rich or caring a lot about brands and superficial things. And I think the plotline is very much a standard romantic comedy.
It's interesting because I do definitely agree with that as well. And but then on the other hand, I do also think like, yeah, I mean, Asians are also entitled to have cheesy romantic comedies. It's not that we only have to make good movies, but the movie is very stereotypical as well in the Crazy Rich Asian. So I like in terms of representation, I don't know if that was the greatest movie, but I mean it was refreshing definitely to see an all Asian cast being so big. Then when Parasite came, I think that kind of changed. Like I think it's a very good movie, but I don't know why it was so popular also in the Western world, in Europe, and why it did so well. What did you think about it?
I think compared to Crazy Rich Asians, it was much deeper. Like it made you think about the divide between rich and poor and the conditions the family was living in, because I think that's not very common in Western Europe. I thought it was an interesting movie and it definitely made me think. But I also remember, I mean, it's been a while since I last watched the movie, but some scenes in it were quite aggressive, which I personally don't like that much. But I definitely found it a thought-provoking movie.
Yeah, I don't know, because I mean the themes about like the division between wealth and like extremely rich and extremely poor. It's something that's I think that's a global theme for sure, but in the Netherlands not so much. It's quite compressed here, I feel, but it's just I think it was very much an Asian movie. Like it didn't really feel as a Western approach to a movie, so I thought it was kind of surprising that it was so popular. But it definitely opened up a lot of opportunities for Asian cinema.
But that's interesting. What would you say was Asian about the movie apart from the cast?
I think it's more in terms of how they tell the story. Like there were a lot of small things, or even like the plot twist at the end. I think the approach or how they build a story is completely different from how cinema or movies in Europe and America are being built up. They're very cookie cut in a certain way, and this is kind of different. But it also means a lot that nowadays, yeah, it doesn't really matter anymore. I think it's people can see different storylines and whatnot. It was just a bit surprising to me.
It's interesting. I've definitely noticed a difference in the characters and themes of the Chinese movies and series I've watched versus the German or American ones, but I don't think I've ever paid that much attention to the different approaches to storytelling. But yeah, it makes a lot of sense and it's quite interesting to think about it. But yeah, Wonseok, last movie review, because it's been talked about a lot recently. What are your thoughts on Everything Everywhere All at Once?
I loved it. To be honest, yeah, when I was watching it, I definitely felt exhausted when I left the cinema. I was like, what just happened? Because I mean, as the title says it, that definitely felt like that as well. No, I did. I really did like it. I also rewatched it the other day again, and I did notice it's a lot packed in one movie. I don't think it's a very approachable movie, but it can be. But some people, I guess, get distracted by the sheer amount of things that are happening and like the visual aspect of it. What did you think about it?
I liked it overall, but I also thought that it was a lot. I think there were a lot of very important topics that were addressed, like intergenerational trauma and LGBTQ, like from an Asian perspective, and the struggles that come with it. But I did find some scenes quite distracting, to be honest. And it was definitely a lot. But I did like it overall, and I think it's definitely a milestone for Asian representation in film.
For me, it was just on the border of absurdness. I can see that it might be too distracting of the storyline, but for me, I think it was just on the border of what it was. I think for me, I really liked the fact that they were like doing this whole thing that every life choice you make splits in a different universe in the one that pursued that life choice or did not. I think that's an aspect of the movie that I really liked. Maybe it's also because I made a drastic life choice somewhere in the history. So like maybe in a universe there's still some dude sitting in the office. But yeah, that's the part I resonated with.
Yeah, that part definitely resonates with me too. It also makes me think of my career change and what would have happened if I had like made different choices in my life.
And if we go back to the beginning of our conversation, like how are your parents with your choices?
Oh my God, that's a good question. So, for context, because some listeners might not know my story, even though I think that most first listeners probably will, I actually have a background in politics, but after a couple of years in the politics and policy space, I decided to quit my job and switch into tech because my worldview had changed quite a lot and I wanted to do something much more tangible than I was doing at the time. So I moved back home and my initial plan was to go traveling first and then switch careers. But it was 2020 And shortly after I moved back home, we went into lockdown. So I was just sitting there in front of my computer trying to teach myself how to code. And my parents said that they were supportive of my decisions and that I could do whatever I wanted. But every now and then, my mom would hint that I should probably stick to what I'm good at, with which she meant politics. But I didn't really want to, so I just kept going. And I eventually found a job at a fintech company here in Berlin. And I think that everyone was very happy for me and relieved as well. But I really did feel a lot of pressure going through the experience. I'm actually going through another period of transition right now, and I don't feel the same amount of pressure I did back then. And I think that's probably because from that experience, my parents learned that I can now make my own decisions.
But that must also be nice to feel like that. At least now you have their trust, right?
I think so, or at least I hope so. But I think a lot of it comes down to knowing and trusting yourself and what you want, because after all, like, it's your life and you need to figure out what it is that you want to do, irrespective of what it is that your parents want you to do. But yeah, bringing the topic back to Asian representation in film, I noticed that all of the movies that we talked about were pretty much Asian or Asian American movies. Are there any examples of Asian and European movies that you can think of?
Well, actually, I'm going this week to an Asian European movie called Return to Seoul. It's by a French filmmaker, and it's actually about an adoptee who's moving back to Korea and like meets up with her biological father. But I don't really know of Asian European movies other than a specific topic, for instance, about adoptees or like a very specific topic. But like, I don't think it's that big, as in, like, there's a lot of Korean American shows now or movies. Or I think Europe is a bit too spread out in terms of culture. Like, you're Asian, but you're also Dutch, or in your case, German, or you're Asian and French. So I think that's also a hard ball to juggle.
Yeah, definitely. It's quite tricky. Yeah, I also sometimes wonder to what extent that is because we talk about these topics and like representation or underrepresentation less than in the States, I think. I think people in the States are louder about it. And I think that we don't yet have like a pan-European or like a more holistic conversation or like platform for it, I think, in terms of like Asian representation in Europe, for example, or like what that means in the first place, right?
Yeah, I think it's difficult because there are so many cultural differences as well. Like, like, it's difficult to form an Asian European identity. I think it's already impossible to form an European identity, let alone an Asian European identity. So I think that's a completely different situation as in the States.
Yeah, I think that's why it's even more important for us to talk about it and what it means to be Asian European, because I think there are a lot of similarities that we share, but I do agree with you that it's very hard to define being an Asian European because it's so hard to define what it means to be European in the first place. But since you mentioned that Asian European movie about a Korean adoptee moving back to Seoul, have you watched it yet? And how do you relate to the movie? Or what have your own experiences been like visiting Korea?
Yeah, so I haven't watched the movie yet. I've only watched the trailer. But yeah, I'm really curious to see what it is and how I relate to it, or if it resonates with me at all. So when I first went back to Korea was actually because I was supposed to make a few videos for Samsung about the flip phone a couple of years ago, and then they canceled the job actually, like, I think a week before I was supposed to go. But they already booked everything, so I did go there eventually. But I don't speak the language, which makes it a bit more difficult. But what I really liked is that when I'm there, I'm anonymous. I can just sit in the subway and like blend in until I open my mouth. But up till that point, it's like it's refreshing to be there, for in contrast to what I know, like the Netherlands. And actually, I grew up in a very rural white town in the Netherlands. So I think there was me, and there was the other Asian kid whose parents had the Chinese restaurant, and we were the only Asians in town. Sometimes it's hard. Like I was there last year again, and I did take Korean lessons, so it's getting a bit better. But still, I'm nowhere. But I can like stumble some Korean words when I order food or when I'm in a restaurant. And I was there, and then this Korean restaurant owner, a middle-aged woman, she was looking at me like with I don't know what her face was, but she wasn't happy about it. That the fact that the guy who looked Korean could not speak properly Korean, and then this tall, I think it was even German, but this tall white dude came in and he said in a very, very accented way, he said, "안녕하세요," like hello. And then the business owner was like, "Oh, your Korean is so good. Your Korean is so good." But yeah, it's a weird thing. I think we've talked about this before. Like it's being a little bit of a void in between. Like for me, I don't feel Dutch. I don't feel Korean, but the outside is very Korean. So when I'm in Europe, it's also how people see me. But yeah, it's difficult.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. And also what you said earlier about just being anonymous. I think that was actually also one of my favorite parts of being in Beijing. I definitely get that feeling of being in a void and nothing but everything all at once, right? But since you're a Korean adoptee, I was also wondering if you know your biological parents.
Yeah, so I do know my father. We actually connected before, no, during COVID actually. But he lives in the United States, and because of COVID, we've not met in real life. Also, he had a car accident which he is recovering from, so he's not being able to take a flight. But yeah, we talk regularly through Kakao, like the Korean WhatsApp.
I forgot about that one. I think the app is so cute and also like the design is so Asian, yeah.
The sound, yeah, there always this kaka.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So we have reconnected and like we were talking about what I do and whatnot. So we were talking before, right, about Asian pressure and whatnot. And the weird thing is, or not the weird thing, but like with my Dutch dad, I feel like I've always struggled about this career choice. And like my Korean dad always asks me if I have new work and show him and that like that it looks so cool and he's so proud. And it's such a weird thing. So I mean, I guess every stereotype is there to be broken as well, which is also nice.
Oh, that's very nice. Yeah. But Wonseok, I'm curious, did you ever find out more about the details around your adoption?
There might be a lot of reasons, but there's also to give you a bigger view on the whole adoption thing and especially the Korean adoption thing. Like in the 80s, the country was still recovering. I think they just had a dictatorship, so it was also a very poor country. And there were actually adoption agencies that went through hospitals and went to parents that just had a child and offered them to give up their child temporarily so the child could study in Europe. And then when the child was grown up, they would come back to Korea to rebuild the nation, etc., etc. So a lot of Korean parents were kind of misled. And in my case, I written with my grandmother till a later age, like I think up till I was 12. We exchanged letters, I think, like twice a year. And in her letters, if you reread them now, they're always like this thing and this hope and that I would come back. Yeah, it's a bit of a weird situation, but like yeah, I don't know yet the full story.
I see. But to shift the conversation a bit from the past to the future, we've talked a lot about your move into film, parental expectations, Asian representation in film, and now your cultural background. What are your future aspirations when it comes to your career? Like, what is the next step for you?
I really like what I'm doing. If I look at people from my age, a lot of them have doubts about their jobs and about the path they've chosen, or are very unhappy in their work and try to find joy elsewhere. I think I'm very lucky that I found something that I'm super happy with. And like every time I'm working on something, it gives me energy. So I definitely want to pursue this more. I just want bigger clients, better clients, more opportunity to make more beautiful stuff for existing clients. So it's yeah, I think it's that direction more.
What advice would you give to someone who wants to break into film and like commercial film in particular?
Nowadays it's just start. I mean, nowadays everyone has a phone with a camera, and you really don't need big gear to make something beautiful or something moving or something happy or something funny. I think it's if you really want to do it, start small, start with things you know, start with a story. Everyone has a story, or your brother or sister has an interesting story, and you can just start. I think the biggest and the most important thing is to just start and don't limit yourself by gear or by cameras or whatnot, all these big things. It's just it starts with a story. As long as you can convey that story in a beautiful way, it will resonate with people.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think we often get hung up on having the perfect conditions to get started, but sometimes it really is just about getting started, as we both know. And yeah, I also have noticed that you often emphasize the storytelling part of it, that everyone has a story, and that is very important to pay attention to the story, which I really appreciate. And yeah, I was also wondering, what advice would you give to your younger self? Because you mentioned that you were one of two Asian kids in the town that you grew up in. So I was just curious what advice you would give yourself.
What advice would I give my younger self? If I would have a conversation with my younger self, I would just tell him that it will be all right. Like, I mean, everything's gonna work out. It's fine. But yeah, it's actually more a quote than from a movie as well. It's like every passing moment is a chance to turn it all around. Like, it is true. Sometimes we're so stuck in things and we're like, oh shit, I'm already doing this for like 10 years. Or if I change, I will disappoint my parents. Or if I change, I will lose my money. Like it is, but it's also not. Like things will work out for themselves and you can change whenever. Like if you're 30, 40, 50, you can change your thing. I mean, you know this as well. Like you can change your life. And it might be scary. It is super scary. And like the longer you are on the path, it's more scary to change it. But in the end you can change it. And like the people around you who love you will support you, even though they don't understand it maybe in the beginning. I think yeah, it's important to know you can change your own life. You're the boss of your own life.
That's very good advice, Wonseok. Maybe like a last question that I have for you, actually, just out of curiosity. What do you envision for Asian representation in film, like in here in Europe? Because we already talked about the fact that it's quite different from the States, right? Here we have like so many different European cultures, and we don't even know what it means to be European, let alone what it means to be Asian, European, or Asian. What would you like to see more of or like less of in terms of actually improving the landscape here so that people like you and me also see themselves in the movies or films and can imagine like a career in that space?
I think ideally I would like to see Asian European films with a more general topic, like the American Asian movies there are now. I think it's difficult because of the language, because already you see that, like in the Netherlands, for instance, like we do watch other European movies, but they're mostly very niche or art house. I think in Germany they still like dub movies, right?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, so that would then also we're another dimension to Asian European movies. I mean, then again, like Parasite and all these movies are also just subtitled. Or was Parasite dubbed actually in Germany?
I don't actually know. I tend to watch the original version of the movies now that I'm older. In the Netherlands, you basically have subtitles with the original sound, right?
Yeah, but it's also because the Netherlands is too small to dub it, so it's just cheaper to slap a subtitle under it and then go for it. But yeah, I think it's hard for Asian European cinema, I guess, but it would be nice to have just a beautiful movie about a random topic in Danish about an Asian family. That would be nice. But yeah, who knows?
Could you imagine yourself creating such a movie?
I mean, of course, I've always played with the idea to make a future film or a documentary or something like that. And then I always felt that if I would make something, it would be either about adoption or about being an Asian in the Netherlands or an Asian in a European environment. But yeah, I've never really explored that direction. But who knows, I might one day.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing like what you are going to do next. Thanks so much, Wonseok, for like taking part in the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Like I said, I feel very honored being the first guest.
Thanks, Wonseok. I hope you enjoyed listening to the first episode. In case you have any questions or comments, feel free to DM me on Instagram. Other than that, Don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for future episodes.